Kevin Chandler didn't want to stop seeing the world. The world just stopped making room. Cities that were built centuries ago, stairs worn down by time, narrow streets and steep paths, places people called, "Oh, you must see this," quietly saying, "Not for you." Kevin used a wheelchair, and like many millions of people with disabilities, he learned that's something most travelers don't ever have to think about. The world celebrates beauty, but it doesn't always consider access. Every guidebook promises wonder, but reality offers barriers. And for a long time, that's where this story could have ended. But then came the moment when the road disappeared completely. There was no ramp, no alternate route, and no solution. In fact, there was only just one choice. Turn back, or you carry him forward. Hey everyone, welcome back to Daniel Tells Stories. If you believe in these real stories that matter as I do, as I keep searching for them every time, stories that are about friendship and faith and about people choosing compassion, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone else who needs hope and who needs a smile. I know you are watching them because I see lots and lots of likes and people seeing it, but I don't see many subscribers. Please subscribe and share this video with somebody else who needs that glimmer of hope today. I know they'll love it. Because this story you're going to hear is not only about disability, this is about people who refuse to leave someone behind. And that is the real message and the real beauty of this story. Before Kevin Chandler even took his first breath, doctors had already warned his parents quite sternly. Their daughter Connie, who was 3 years older, was born with spinal muscular atrophy. This neuromuscular disease, it weakens the muscles and it limits movements, creating it so that a person cannot walk and eventually needing a wheelchair and not being able to do much. The doctor said plainly, if you have another child, it will probably be the same. However, Kevin's parents looked at Connie, that joyful, kind-hearted little girl, a girl whose life was full of meaning despite her limitations. And they answered with quiet courage, if that's the worst that can happen with a child like her, then that is okay with us. And of course, a little bit later, Kevin was born with SMA2. And SMA, of course, is spinal muscular atrophy. As he grew older, his muscles began to weaken, and eventually he did have to use a wheelchair. But the wonderful thing is about the Chandler home is the focus was never on what he lacked. It was on who he was. His parents taught him that even if his body struggled, even if he struggled physically, his purpose didn't shrink. Kevin grew up knowing that his life did matter, not because of what he could do, but because of who he was. As he grew up, Kevin loved music. He loved literature and history and all those wonderful monuments that we all do in Europe and in Asia and all the rest of places. He dreamed of going to Europe, to Paris, England, and the Green Isle of Ireland. But accessibility issues kept him grounded. Old cities don't bend easily for wheelchairs, so that dream stayed silent until his friends stepped in. Now, these weren't your ordinary friends. These were people who had become his arms and legs when he needed them. So, in 2015, 6 friends planned a trip across Europe together. And when accessible paths disappeared, they didn't ask, oh, should we stop, or what do we do, we're not sure. They basically said something better. How do we keep going? They designed a custom backpack. Not to make a statement, not to go viral, it was just to carry their friend and continue on their great journey. So when the wheelchair couldn't go any further, they just lifted Kevin onto their backs. And they continued on this fantastic journey through Europe. They carried him through Paris, up the Sacré-Cœur de Basilica, along the Seine River, which is so beautiful. They traveled through England, and then finally coming to Ireland, and to one of the hardest places of all to access, Skealing Michael. This steep, wind-beaten island rising out of the sea was beautiful and incredible views to see, but intense. On top of it stood the 6th century monastery, stone huts built by monks who chose their devotion over comfort. Nearby, of course, there were tourists of Star Wars there with lightsabers, because as you know, the island appeared in The Last Jedi. So you had 2 worlds standing side by side, people there for entertainment and people there who'd come for faith. Kevin mentioned this contrast to his friends, and some of them came for the movie moment while others came searching for meaning. They recognized that the monks didn't escape the hardships. They committed their lives to prayer, and even seeing that their mainland was in the distance, they kept on going, living there. So for Kevin and his friends, that hike wasn't just physical, it was about community. It was about commitment. It was about choosing what truly matters. That journey became a book that he wrote called We Carry Kevan. It also became a nonprofit organization, a movement built on the simplest of ideas. Accessibility isn't just about ramps and elevators, it's about helping people, especially when systems fall short. As he continued to grow older, Kevin eventually traveled to China, and at Maria's Big House of Hope, a care center for orphans with special needs, something wonderful happened. Here were children with disabilities being carried using his same backpack. Not as a miracle solution, but as a tool, as one might use a wheelchair or any of the other tools they use. But this is a great way to say, we love you, and you matter, and you are worth the effort. So what started as a trip with friends, trying to figure out how do we get across Europe, had reached to the other side of the world and made an impact as well. In Kevin's story, it doesn't pretend that the world is fair, because life is not fair. Paths are still steep. Access to them is still uneven. But his life shows us something very, very important that we should need to know. Sometimes the path won't change. Sometimes the streets will stay the same. The stairs will still be steep. But the way we move through it, the way we show up for each other, and the way we do things can change everything. And sometimes changing a life is as simply as deciding that someone is worth carrying. And I know a lot of you have been enjoying these stories as well, because I see you on there. So make sure you do subscribe to Daniel Tells Stories, because the world becomes a kinder place when we can carry stories like this forward and pass it on to somebody else who needs that glimmer of hope today. Thank you to those who've already been watching and responding, especially in the comments, and subscribing to this channel. It really helps me feel good and makes me feel like I'm trying to make a difference as well in the world. I look forward to seeing you next time on Daniel Tells Stories. Have a great day.